questions on the I'm in progress, right? Kat and Jason over here will take any questions remotely from that would need to be answered. And any questions that we have, we will try and take care of as we go along. But certainly before you leave here at 4 o'clock, exact on time, we want to make sure we've got covered everything that you need to know to carry out the easy compliance check. And at the center of it is really law enforcement. And it's really key that that you really execute well. What do you think of that? So that's the way we've started this easy. I think Amber, it's Salt Lake County. We can thank her and love communication. So we have a radio ad to go with us today. We have these posters to hand out, and we have a website that you will see that's connected to the DABS website. And we have other we have videos for the cops that you'll see introduced along the way. So we have a much more widespread audio-visual support going into this, going to easy going forward. And I want to make it known too, that all this material over here, you can just take up and fill up your bag that you would want. And I want to give recognition to the easy partnerships. I want to tell you, this is the only state in this country that has a fully functional, fully funded statewide compliance check program. And that is really something that we can thank the legislative for, to fund it. And all of these partners that you see located here really have a part, and you'll see throughout the day, we all have a part in the easy compliance check program. And one of the things I wanted to make note is over on the right, you'll see the law enforcement agencies, which are the local law enforcement agencies that really handle the off-premise retail easy compliance check. That's where the ball really belongs. And then to do the bars and the restaurants, we have significantly increased over the years up to a 23 unit alcohol enforcement team at state level to not only help you with easy if you like it, from cups to whatever, especially in the rural areas, but also to do the bars and to do the restaurant. Now, to put that in perspective, Wyoming has 2, Idaho has 1, we have 23. So you can make sure the legislature understands really how important it is for underage drinking and for over intoxicated people and comply with the alcohol laws. So everybody there is involved. You'll see it as we go through the day. Just a little bit about why easy. It started about 16 years ago. There are compliance checks going on. Utah County had the whole countywide compliance check program. I know Hurricane was, Cedar City, there's some up north. But as we looked across where we were in 2005, our underage drinking was going up, not down. And one of the things we decided to do was to implement a statewide easy program, compliance check program, because we knew from the data from Utah County showed that the arrests went down, and also that we wanted a uniform thing. Because first of all, a couple of things. Retailers wanted uniform training. It was really important to them. If you're a Smith or a Gans or somebody, wanted uniform training. They wanted, it was important for us to have uniform sanctions. Because when we looked across, we had some, quite frankly, that were too draconian. They don't work when it's too draconian. We had some that were too light. And we didn't have any way to attract the training. So, and funding was the problem. So all 3 issues we stepped up with easy which is fully funded. All retailers we've brought the retailers, everybody played at the table. We worked out easy with everybody at the table. We agreed upon the sanctions, we agreed upon the training, law enforcement, 4 checks a year, etc. So we really got a uniform thing put together, and the code was actually written at DABS. And so it was pretty much a consensus a response to underage drinking and compliance check. This you see here was where all the mayors in Salt Lake County came together. They endorsed the EASY program and compliance checks, put out a proclamation and signed it. And that was really key when we advanced the legislation and went forward. But let me tell you, that was not the whole story. It's important to understand that myself and others did not want law enforcement on the front end of the sword on this underage drinking. And all of a sudden in the communities, we had underage drinking checks. We wanted to engage the entire community to take down the numbers, because you can't just arrest your way out of this problem. So at the very same legislation, we introduced what is now known today as parentsempowered.org, but a community-wide effort to really reduce underage drinking. And so you have seen some of the ads, and okay, that's our most recent ad. What are we trying to do there? We're really trying to get the parents' attention at age 9 to start talking to their kids about underage drinking. That's what's recommended. But it's more than just an ad program. We meet once a week. It's run out of the Department of Alcohol and Beverage Control. All of the players are there, and all are invited there. And there we talk about what else are we going to do to really drop the demand for underage drinking. And it's really been nice to mobilize, completely mobilize throughout the state for the last 16 years. So people are asking, does it work? Well, here's a combined effort. So it's not really just one thing, it's just everybody together. This is a collective effort. And when you start everything at once, then it's really hard to isolate out things. But this is really an extraordinary effort where in Utah, we have reduced underage drinking faster than the national average, and that's really hard to do when your numbers start to slow. So you look at this orange line, where we've really dropped it almost 60%. And that's a collective effort on everybody's part and the parents. And because, we all said it's not your job to monitor the kids on Friday night. That's the parents' job to monitor the kids on Friday night. So when we look at EASY, what we need out of law enforcement from a collective effort is for you to do the EASY compliance check, because we said we want to shut down the retail supply. That has to be shut down. At the same time, we want to shut down the social supply or the demand. You have to lower the demand while you shut down the retail supply. And that's EASY's job, to shut down the retail supply. And so the track record, here's one that we used where in Utah County, where they collected the data, which is harder to do today because of the juvenile justice reform. But you can see how much their arrest rate has dropped when EASY was engaged. And that's really an important part. The other thing is you set a community norm, okay, that underage drinking is not acceptable in this community. That's why it's important for you to do and engage in the EASY checks. If you also set the community norm. And so I want to just run through the agenda, because you'll see how each of these things really, really matter. So the first, Rob's going to talk about the data that we need to actually run EASY. We need to know where we are. And so, when we report out, we have issued an annual report. Jill back here has issued it from Highway Safety every year on every compliance check, by every agency every year is a published annual report, along with Parents Empowered, back to who funds us. If you want to be funded, what do they want to know? Where is my money going and how effective it is? So we're going to review how important the data is. The retail partnerships is really key because we've asked the retailers to do certain things. And Michelle and will cover that. And it's important to have the right kind of, and they're not our enemies, they're our partners, a curious partner, but a partner in this. And they have a stake in doing it. And the way Easy works is you will, in a retailer, play in the sandbox, or you will not sell liquor. Sell your off-premise stuff. So everybody's agreed, and they need to get trained, they're registered, and all of that sort of thing. So retail partnerships are important, and then we'll take a break, and then we want to go over the administrative violation process, because it's changed a little bit because the ABS now licenses all of the off-premise people, and they will adjudicate all of the violations that have to do with selling underage, and that's important. After lunch, cup training is key. Every law enforcement agency wants to know how to do that, and feed the cups, and we have video support on that. And then we're going to go through the future and how do you sustain it. And then gears is from highway safety, because if you want your money for reimbursement, you need to report whether you sell or not sell to Jill, who will reimburse you, and also compiles the annual report. So we're going to start through this, and I'm going to ask Rob to come up, and any questions you have as we go along. But I want to tell you how important your work is, because there's two things that concern me. When these kids drink, they drive. And they ride with drunk drivers. And that's why it's important to make sure another reason we need to shut it off at the retail level. So when they're out partying, they going to get something to drink. Then you know they're going to be driving or riding with somebody. And the crash risk for a teenager is twice an adult, 3 times an adult. It's off the charts after a certain thing. So once in a while you see us lose kids. Well, it's really hard out in the rural in every area to lose these kids so young. So it's not only for the community norm, it's for the protection of the norm. And the other reason is most retailers want to do their stuff, but they'll get bad apples and they will sell. And that's another reason we need to do this regularly. So I'm going to have Rob come up. I'm going to get off and we'll stay on schedule. Thanks.
Push the button. I've been to enough commission meetings that I know you got to push the button. So I'm sorry, I missed that. My name is Rob Timmerman. I'm a regional prevention director in the state's prevention system. That's a small title in a big system that I work in. I have the pleasure to work with Salt Lake County, Utah County, Summit County, and Wasatch County. Do we have any? I know we've got Summit County. Do we have officers from Wasatch, Utah, or Salt Lake County here? All right, thank you. Welcome. I get to work with the amazing people that you get to work with in those places. Art talked a little bit about some of the numbers. I'm going to talk a little bit about a little bit more about the numbers. And as I do that, there's one important number that I really want you to remember when I am done. And Art showed this graph, but I want to make sure that we really understand the number behind what the graph is. Since Easy started, there is a 62% decrease in underage drinking in Utah among our 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grade students. That's a huge, huge deal. Utah started below everybody else in the nation. We continue to outpace the nation in the decrease of kids that report underage drinking. We do it faster than the rest of the nation. It's not just because of the culture that we have here, but it's because of the work that you all do. Again, I want to make sure that we can remember these numbers this day. So I've got a couple of things that I hope will help us remember the number 62%, 62% decrease. This first illustration is, you're wondering, why is it a small dog sleeping in bed? I actually did some research and found that 62% of small dog owners sleep with their dogs every night. Do we have any small dog owners here? Do you sleep with your dog and your, yes, you do. Right, okay, so 62% of you sleep with your dogs every night. Found that fascinating. Let's do another one. 62% of people over the age of 50 plan on doing some travel this year. This is according to AARP. If you're over 50, I won't make you raise your hand, but think, are you going to, you're going to, someone said, are you going to do travel? If you're over 50, you're going to travel this year? Fantastic. Where are you going to, where are you going to go? You don't know yet. Okay, Vegas, California, 62% of people over 50 are going to travel this year. This is an interesting one I found as well. 62%, oh, sorry, billionaires increased their wealth by 62% during the pandemic. Any billionaires here? You want to be billionaires here? 62%, or billionaires increased their wealth 62% during the pandemic. Speaking of billionaires, I found this one really interesting. This is according to Pew. 62% of people believe in hell. Interesting. 62% believe in hell. That means there's people that don't. I would believe in hell if it's a place without donuts. One of my favorite things. 62% of people in the United States believe in hell. Also, I found this one, in case you're interested. These shoes at BB are 62% off right now. Only if you wear a size 7, though.
They look great on you.
They look great on me. I might not try them. Hopefully you remember that number, 62%. There's a 62% decrease in underage drinking. That's why we're here today. We want to continue to decrease the numbers of kids in Utah that are exposed to alcohol and start drinking. Art mentioned that he had a pretty good list, and I'm going to add to the list of the collaboration that takes place in Utah to reduce underage drinking. There are amazing partners across the board, from the Department of Alcohol and Beverage Services, the Commission, and the staff, Highway Safety Office. Again, remarkable efforts that happen because of the Highway Safety Office. The Department of Health and Human Services with the Office of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, as well as the Office of Health Promotion and Prevention. The State Bureau of Investigation, local law enforcement, local area authorities that work with substance use disorder and prevention, local health departments, community coalitions, schools, parents and families, and kids that have made the decision not to drink until they're 21. It's a collaborative effort. We're all working together. We all want to continue to decrease the numbers of people that, or of kids that drink underage in the state of Utah. I like the imagery of a toolbox when talking about collaboration and working together. We all bring different tools to the toolbox, to the job that we're doing to reduce underage drinking. I've listed out here several evidence-based programs, practices, or policies that we know work to reduce underage drinking. Anything from skill building and skill and resilience building programs in schools or after school settings, things like parent and family strengthening programs, guiding good choices or strengthening families, education campaign. Art mentioned Parents Empowered does a remarkable job in educating parents throughout the state of Utah, and in fact, throughout the country and even world. We get requests from all over the world of people wanting information about how we do our Parents Empowered campaign. It's such an effective campaign to get information to parents to help them build skills in helping their kids stay away from alcohol. And then regulation on the sale of alcohol, outlet density. The fewer places that sell alcohol, if we create these laws and zoning and policies that limit, there is a correlated reduction in alcohol use by underage drinkers, limiting hours and days of sale and marketing and placement of alcohol products to our youth. We know those things work. We do those really well here in the state of Utah. And then, of course, what we're all here to talk about, the evidence of enforcing laws prohibiting sales to minors is strong. It's there. We know that easy compliance checks work. We see it in our state. We see it across the country and the world. We know that eliminating alcohol sales to youth really works. Okay, so here's the number that I wanted to show as well. From 2015 to 2021, and I know it's hard to see because there's that dialog box right there. So I will tell you exactly what I said. These are youth indicating that they purchased their alcohol from the store. This comes from a survey called the SHARP survey, the Student Health and Risk Prevention Survey, if you've heard of that. It is the students that are asked where they get their alcohol from. And we are seeing a reduction in students that are indicating that they themselves go into a store and buy alcohol. This is, again, in part because of the work that you are doing. So thank you very, very much. This helps continue to drive down that rate of underage drinkers in our state. These are compliance checks. Oh, I did it on my computer. I need to do it here. Here we go. These are the compliance checks, the easy compliance checks since the program started, since 2007. The number of compliance that are reported through the GEAR system to the Highway Safety Office. The good news is on that right, we stay around 90% of compliance. That means every time that you go in to do a check, only 1 of every 10 that you do fails that check or sells to a minor. But let's not think of the 1 in 10 that you do. Let's think of how many potential times youth go into stores in the state of Utah and are denied a sale of alcohol. Again, that's because of the work that you do, the compliance checks. They're so very, very important. Again, I threw this in here. This shows a little bit by county compliance rate in this past year, fiscal year 22. Again, it's great news that we're hovering at that 90%. Would we love it to be 100%? You bet. We'd love to not have a retailer sale, and that's ultimately our goal. And I think we could get there. We might. A couple of things that I'm going to skip this one actually because I think I have built it in. Art mentioned there is actually some reasoning why easy numbers are important and specifically important to the state of Utah. Through the Department of Health and Human Services, in particular the Office of Substance Use and Mental Health, they collect Jill's report that she gets and actually tie that to funding that's associated with prevention programs through the 13 local area authorities. And I will show you those real quick. Each year, those local area authorities have to account for the easy checks in their area. So therefore, it becomes really important that you as law enforcement continue to do checks and report checks through the GEARS system. Those reports are then compiled and sent on to county councils and commissions. So it actually has some teeth in it. We need to know and understand how many compliance checks are taking place, and areas that are doing them. We're so very, very grateful. You see the numbers, we know that it's working, and areas that need to improve and do more checks. This is one of the ways that they understand and realize that it is an important thing to do. So here are our 13 local area authorities. These are the areas that are responsible for reporting your easy checks to their own county councils and county commissions. Again, some funding from the state of Utah is actually tied to easy reporting. There's a requirement. Here we go, and I have it here. I should have deleted that other slide. there's a requirement that each area increase their easy checks year to year. What does that mean? It's actually really, really simple. Each area is required to do just one more compliance check than they did last year. Surprisingly, there are areas that can't meet that requirement. And those areas then have opportunity to work with you as local law enforcement to increase their compliance checks each year. So I want to talk about community coalitions. I have dropped a pin in the community coalitions that we know of in the state of Utah. If there's a community coalition that you are aware of and I haven't dropped a pin in this map, please let me know. We need to make sure that we connect with those people. Another really, really important piece of the easy compliance checks and the reporting that you do is the opportunity that local communities have to work with you and support you in the checks that you do to make sure that those checks are being done and that they are increased year over year. I can tell you stories of community coalitions around the state that work very closely with their law enforcement in supporting easy checks. Anything from a chair of a coalition that I know had a son that she volunteered to be a Cub and worked in the Cub program with their local law enforcement. It's extremely important. I'm seeing Art get up. I've got a couple minutes left. Thanks. I wanted to just again say thank you so much. A couple more numbers before I leave. There are 1,600 off-premise retailers in the state of Utah. 195 towns and communities throughout the state of Utah have at least one off-premise retailer. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of opportunities to improve in the way that we do. And anything that we do to improve our compliance checks, to improve the reporting, to improve the collaboration, all of that helps reduce the numbers of kids that drink underage in the state of Utah. And again, that's what's important. Since the program started, what percentage decrease do we have in kids that drink underage in the state of Utah? 62%. Thank you for the work that you do, the collaborations that you are a part of, and the lives that you're affecting when we're talking about the youth in the state of Utah. Thanks a lot for what you do.
Hey, Michelle, Sean, you're up. Why come on up? And what I wanted to say why they're up here, the design point of EASY is really 95% compliance. You get that when you do 4 checks a year. That's what's important. But let me tell you, our design point, we don't want to give out Class B misdemeanors because it slows us up. We want to say, go in, do compliance check, pass, and move on to the next one. And we didn't design this program. That's what we want. We want compliance. We don't want to count Class B misdemeanors. We want to count compliance. And to have a good partner in the retail is really important. And so we're delighted to have Sean and Michelle take the next little while to tell us why that partnership's great.
My name is Sean Cannon. I work for Utah Department of Public Safety, Safety Investigation Alcohol Enforcement Team. I've been doing that just over 7 years altogether. Outreach their licenses for mainly.
I am Michelle Carigliano. I run the Salt Lake Area Restaurant Association. We represent the independent restaurant and bar owners in Salt Lake County, and we have quite a few members outside the county. We do a lot of lobbying for liquids.
So we're going to go over today. So it's like we're going to talk about who our audience is, how to build that trust within the community with their retail licenses, and what's your goal as with law enforcement, and how to build that rapport with those licenses that you have in the area.
So, yeah, so off-premise alcohol licensees, so we have 1,600 that was just mentioned. On-premise is 2,250. Total is just about under 4,000 licensees that you all are kind of checking up on.
Sorry about that, battery turned off. As far as, just remember, we're just talking about the owners, we're also talking management and cashiers as well. So basically, when you're going in, you're not just talking to the management. We're also focusing on the cashiers, who are actually doing work and actually things. And also the owners. Closer. Sorry. So the groups that we have that when we're working out there is going to be your officers, your licensees, your owners, your management, your employees, Department of Alcohol Beverage Services, and just the general public, that be your parents.
Yeah, and what has worked for Solara, we have had Lieutenant Adams from SBI has done what independent meetings through Tanner Leonard, who's an alcohol attorney. And we have an open forum where SBI comes, kind of explains what the stats have been for the last year. Owners come and are able to ask questions and understand how this works. One thing I can positively say 100% of our owners are committed to not serving minors. Now, the hard thing in the restaurant industry is that you have to hire. There's usually a revolving door of maybe 20–30% of employees that are coming and going. So they all have to do their on-premise alcohol training. And even though prior to this legislative session, they had 30 days to get that license, none of the owners that I know of, we have about over 300 members, never let an employee start without doing the training. The hard part is that it's human error. And I have never heard of a situation where an employee purposefully knew that there was an underage person ordering a cocktail and then serving it. It's usually human error, looking at the license, not really calculating, or thinking that the person looked old enough to drink without checking ID.
So what's worked with us as a department as we've gone out and actually reached out to our different licensees and offered training for free, and then also making communications with the different retail groups and parents. We try to get out there as much as possible and offering. I work around their schedule, so like a lot of restaurants, their time is important. So I usually try to do like Sunday mornings or Saturday mornings or early mornings, and just working with them as much as possible. As far as retailers, as far as like Smiths, we have to do the same thing. Public outreach, you're going to have to probably make sure your availability is very, very high. That's what I do. So when I reach out to a licensee that wants training, my first thing I tell them what works for you, what time. So you kind of have to make sure you're more open before you put in charge of your training program. Make sure they're well aware that you have to work with their schedule, because sometimes you work Monday through Thursday during the day. That's not going to work for a lot of places because you're going to be open. So you might have to pick a Saturday or Sunday or even do a nighttime training. So obviously the things that work for that the public license look for in us is going to be your officers are friendly and outgoing. So make sure you're hiring or putting someone in that position that actually wants to be there, not negative. Prevention, education oriented. We'll make sure that person, is, I guess, not only outgoing, but likes to teach, but a good teacher. That's a good teacher. Willing to help when requested. Again, being open and transparent. So if they have a request for help, like say, give you an example, there's maybe a gas station that's getting inundated with fake IDs. Help them. Going out there and doing certain type of operations to help them to facilitate getting those kids to stop buying alcohol. Taking your complaint seriously. So if you get a complaint, get it done. Don't let it sit in the back burner and wait for another complaint coming in from that location. And then someone mentioned this earlier, equal treatment of licensees. So all the licensees are getting treated exactly the same, so you're not just focusing just on one, you're focusing on all of them, so the whole community feels they're being treated equally.
And go in there knowing that owners do not want to risk their licenses. They understand the value of them, and their intent is not to serve underage. So if an employee does screw up, do know that the owners are not supporting that at all.
So some of the things that I've done to build that bridge is offer alcohol training and education to our on-premise licensees. Compliance and educational checks. Just doing outreach, in-person visits. You can just physically walking in and just talking to the management once in a while. I'll actually walk in bars all the time and just talk to management. A lot of the bartenders and doormen in downtown Salt Lake know me personally. It just makes it kind of awkward sometimes while walking in there on like just to have dinner. And then providing resources to those licensees and up-to-date information. So like example, legislative session just ended recently. So if we have any type of updates, make sure you're passing that information on to your licensees. And transparency. If there's an issue in your area and you're working on it, it might be sometimes bringing in that owner or management of that licensee into the fold. They can help you fix that issue. And the notification visits, making sure that when you're actually doing those visits and they're actually passing or they're not passing, you're sending out those letters in a timely manner so you can fix the issue. Or they can praise the employee immediately. So some places now actually give bonuses.
Big money.
Yeah. So make sure those letters get out there as fast as possible.
And Art, correct me if I'm wrong, but now you have to have that on-premise and off-premise permit day one of starting work. It doesn't have that 30 days. So that's a big change in the legislation this year.
Yeah. Before all that. Michelle's right. We had a meeting earlier this year or last year on what would we change about compliance checks. All of the retailers wanted the 30-day grace period to go away. Why? Because they don't want the risk of selling. And so that 30-day grace period's gone. And so when they now authorize them to sell alcohol, they've already been trained. Let me tell you why that's good. Even when you're in the 30-day period, grace period, if you should happen to sell, you're still going to get a Class B misdemeanor. And for me, that's not a good idea, because the way I look at it, and I think that's what's wrong with the tobacco program that I'm all over for. If we're going to give somebody a Class B misdemeanor, we better make sure they're educated. And I think we're all agreed with that. And that's why one of the reasons from both sides that's changed. You get educated. The other thing I'll say while I'm here, it's important to give, by law, you have to give notification. When you go in there, they pass the check, then you're to notify them that you've been in there, they have passed. You don't have to do it there because you want to go on to the next one and the next one and the next one, and don't want to have the cub be known, of course, in the covert buy. But don't forget the thank you letters, because of course when they sell, they know it. But the thank you letters are really important to reinforce people, because we hope 9 out of 10 you've given these thank you letters is what we really want to do. So does that answer that?
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if it was off-premise also. I know, yeah, so on-premise, off-premise, immediately, you have to have that training.
To say a lot of our sales recently, and Lieutenant's nodding, I know he knows where I'm going with it. Most of our sales, like, they have been people that were not trained. It's kind of nice having that back up and having that 30 day limit.
So educational checks recommended that premises that have not been visited over a year, or if you're an agency starting to begin the EASY program in your area, to have the educational checks. And retailers do have this ability to set this up. It's been super helpful. I just went to one probably 2 weeks ago at about time, and I know that the managers find it extremely helpful to have that not one-on-one, but one business, a private training. They can ask the questions that they have. You know, one question that does come up a lot is if a minor comes in and tries to use a fake ID, can the owners confiscate that ID? And from talking to Sean, he said, well, they're not really supposed to confiscate them, but my owners feel like if they confiscate them, this minor won't go to the bar down the street and try to use it again. So what we advise is if they do confiscate them, that they are turned into SBI immediately. I don't know if, like, I thought about it afterwards and I thought, oh, maybe they're taking the Cubs IDs. So as long as they turn them into you, it should be fine.
Yeah, the problem we have is obviously you're in the Salt Lake area, which is a little different. There's a lot of Salt Lake officers here, Salt Lake County area officers. And we all know the response time can be dramatic. Difference between, say, Salt Lake City and, say, Morgan County. I know there's Morgan County that be. Could be a minute, maybe 2 or 3 to get out there, whereas Salt Lake City, they might not be able to respond at all. So if you take that ID, and what happens if it's a real ID? That person's now, and they flew in, and maybe they're just visiting. You have to be real cautious about taking people's ID because you're guessing. You don't know 100% if that's fake or not, so you have to be really careful about taking those IDs. So that's why we're always kind of cautious licensees taking them because you don't know. And then that person's kind of stuck with that ID. So that's one of the reasons why we talk about not taking them, giving it back to the person, because if you're not 100% sure you're taking someone's property, there is some repercussions possibly down the road. So, sorry, I didn't put this one together, so I'm reading it. Sorry. So, all these educational checks, make sure you're encouraging that opportunity to actually tell them why you're there and why it's safe. The safety portion of selling alcohol, making sure that you understand that it's important that you're there, you're not there just to bust them, I guess you say, because everybody thinks that you're there to write the ticket. And that's one of my things. When I give out my trainings, I always tell licensees, I'm here to educate you so you don't sell. I'm not here to write the ticket. I'm here to make sure that you're actually obeying the law, that you're actually checking the IDs, that you're not overdoing. And a lot of times you can encourage that conversation and actually speak with these people so they understand that you're there to help them, and then to make sure that you're kind of pushing that agenda of I'm checking IDs, you're checking IDs, and you're not just there to just write tickets.
And just to throw in, overconsumption is a big deal too, and to continue to stress not to overserve people. That's been coming up a lot, particularly during the legislative session, and we just want to make sure that when you are doing trainings, that overconsumption piece is big stress as well, besides serving underage.
So real quick, we're just going to go over some of the things we want to look for. So obviously you want to make sure that the beer and alcohol that's there is actually being lawfully purchased. So if you see liquor at your gas station, you might want to talk to them about that. It actually has happened. We've actually been at gas stations. The funny thing is the Chevron over there. We're at a gas station and recently within the last year, and they didn't have a license to sell alcohol at all, and they had a bunch of alcohol. So we had to notify the local agencies and say, hey, so they had to go down there, and the business licensing department had to go down there and talk to them. I don't know how hard it is on the process. I don't want to say which, okay, I can say Chevron, but I'm not going to say which one. And then also making sure that we're not having large opportunities of beers. The one that I noticed a lot as far as gas stations is you have one attendant and there's no manager on site. And they are required to look at that. The employee doesn't have, saying he's 18 years old, there's no one else there. He can't serve alcohol, which actually happens quite a lot in the day. So make sure, especially a smaller town, they're looking for those type of things. Drinking and intoxicating food, I know we put that on there. Make sure, we actually ran into that recently. Times now when we had employees drinking and intoxicating. Gas stations or grocery stores. Beer displays, obviously you have more than two. Warning signs are displayed. It's very important to make sure your employees are wearing their name badges because if the drink's been on, the public wants to file a complaint with you. They know who they're talking about. It's actually another one that you see a lot of not wearing IDs. Then obviously the sales monitors and the basket person for the steps.
So I have a question regarding minors may not sell alcohol unless divided by an employee over 21 years old.
That's correct.
A lot of times the law will refer to under the age of 21 as an underage person. Is that why underage person about alcohol or maybe?
Underage is underage 21.
So using the word minor, that's what my question here.
Adult minor.
Are you
So basically,
someone is a minor for the 21?
That's correct, because they don't have the training. They can't take the sips and tips or the on-premise or off-premise training because they're 21. They don't have the training, so they have to have somebody there that's actually from the age.
But they can't be under 18.
Correct.
A retail clerk can be 16.
So they have to have somebody there that's over. They have to be on the premise. Yeah, they just have to be on the premise. So, like, yeah, backstock. Yeah, sorry, the sergeant said backstock room. So, like, just be on the premise of the. He's not going to stand there the whole time. As long as they're still like stocking the shelves or wiping the rear or whatever. Yeah, just need to be on the premise. So, if there's a question, they can come back to that person, help them. Correct. Mr. Brown stated, yeah, that now they have to have that training. It starts at
Well, 16 and older, you
May 3rd. Starting May 3rd.
sell alcohol, you have to have the off-premise, you have to have the training. 16-year-olds, like they said here, but they gotta be trained. And
They can take the off-premise training at
no,
16.
They can't take it at 16?
Off-premise.
off-premise,
Off-premise.
let me just make it real clear. Try to. The law is 16 if you have someone 21 years old, but anyone who sells alcohol 16 and above has to have the easy, thank you. Yeah, the off-premise, we're mixing a little bit of on-premise and off-premise for you. This is off-premise, primarily an off-premise day. And for an off-premise retailer, they can have a 16-year-old and above. They have to have somebody 21 on age at the service station or wherever. And they all have to be trained. They have to go through the easy training, which in a few months will have to occur before they start the first sale. Okay.
And manager, I'm not familiar with this, but manager training needs to do the manager training at DABS.
Yeah.
Off premise as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I feel about on-premise, very good off-premise, so I'm talking about, sorry, I'm thinking of what I do is my job, so like, there's a part of there's a part of my life.
They can't be virtual.
And the manager training that off premise and on premise must be first done through DBS and then every year retrained with the online classes. So, and it's not called sips and tips. That's like clean.
Question over here.
On premise, off premise, permanent training. Okay, so on premise is our retailers like gas stations convenience stores that sell beer on premise or restaurants and bars.
For the consumption. Yeah, for the consumption, so you're taking the beer off the premise to drink it somewhere else on premise, just because you're drinking it on the premise of the sale. So these are there's some pamphlets over here on the corner here, and these are just a picture of it, so we're making sure you guys are handing these out when you're doing your visits. Okay, there you go. Make sure you're handing those out to your, especially when you're doing your educational visits. They have some pamphlets, I would say, give them a couple. Make sure management gets them. So just making sure that you want to put them out, and making sure that you have English and Spanish. You can do that. You can go over while you're doing the educational checks.
You can also leave those brochures with the retailers. They can give them to every single cook they've got. They can request more at no charge.
So if you guys run out, make sure and hand them out as many as you want, and Jill will have get you as many as you want. If you want a couple hundred, she'll work it out. Just real quick, again, biggest thing is our goals and the goals of licensees are the exact same. Prevention of alcohol to youth sales. So just a reminder, like she mentioned before, they don't want to get in trouble because it costs money using business and reputation with rural community. Injuries and stuff.
Sell to minors, also overconsumption and prevention of drunk driving.
Questions?
Thank you.
Again, we have one comment from the chat. Thanks. Just a note from the Salt Lake County Health Department, talking about the letters to send out to past compliant checks. Retailers, they said that they've been sending postcards out instead of letters, just to be cheaper and faster to send out. Just a note on making it simple to do that process. Go ahead in the back.
I was just wondering with the change to the definition of intoxication, it's probably going to go into effect. Is that going to be included in the EV training discussion happening?
The change in definition of intoxication, I'm sure, which by the way is HB 247. You should have, there's more in it than that, but I'm sure it will be engaged in all of the training. Will whatever. There's a number of all, let me just say this, all easy training is approved by the Department of Health and Human Services. And so all of that's approved. I'm sure Holly Watson will see that all those definitions get updated in all the courses. So that's one thing we do that's unique. It's not in the tobacco. They do what they want, but our complete training structure is controlled by Department of Human Services. Then when you're done with training, every employee that trains is then registered on a database. I think there's over 250,000 employees that have been trained on the database because, as Michelle said, there's a lot of turnover. And so we track that. And what is different, why am I training? Used to be 5 years for the restaurants and bars and 3 years for off-premise. Now it's all 3 years. That's what everybody agreed upon. So they have to renew their training every 3 years. For off-premise, you will be on this database. And so that's important to realize that we really do. One of the things when 60 years ago, we wanted uniform training, thorough training, passed off and audited, so there's no funny business, right? So, you know, because again, if you're gonna go out and you're gonna go arrest people, I believe we have an obligation to see that they're trained and trained thoroughly. That's only fair, so that's the way training works, so. Any other questions? Very good. How about a hand for them? Before we take a break, let me, off premise. What you don't want to do if you've not been out because of COVID or you're just starting up to do it. What you want to do is take those retail pamphlets and go around and make sure they know that you're coming. Okay, it's really important. So they know you're coming, they can get trained if they're not trained, and et cetera. It's not your obligation to train them. And again, I don't want you to think that when you go in on a covert, let me just say, what our experience has been, even though you make your rounds, they're gonna sell anyway. And it's really interesting, like in one town, the mayor and the police chief went around to all 10. Well, so they can tell them we're coming. Well, guess what? 5 out of 10 sold, right? Another county, 4 out of 4 sold. Another place, 8 out of 10 sold. So really it's really important though that you don't surprise them. That you go around, let them know you're coming. And then, and I think that's important too. And the one that sold 5 out of 10, the city council called all of those people in front of them and said, what are you doing selling to minors? So, but we want them educated. We want them, you know, let them know you're coming. And I think that works out a lot better and give them a chance. Now, you don't feel out when you go in with a cup, you don't have time to check about all this other stuff. That can be done by DABS or some other time. You just go in there with your cup, they either sell or you don't sell, and out you go. Because you don't want to let them know you're making the rounds or anything else. So don't, and you're not obligated to educate them either. It just depends. It's their job to get training, and then whatever you want to work with them, then go work with them, especially in the rural communities. I want to say one more thing before we take a break. In the rural communities, it's been my experience, don't get a cub from a local high school to do this stuff. They get hounded. And what you want to do is work with SBI and maybe use some of their cubs and even some of their officers if the convenience stores in rural areas. So, so it's important that SBI, use SBI where you want to, but you're up, but the ball rests with you for the local off-premise C&G stores to do. And then SBI takes care of the bars and restaurants, but it doesn't permit law enforcement, local law enforcement to do anything they want or vice versa. Before we started Easy, everybody was doing everything and it was overlapped and it was rather confused. We just kind of split them and that's the way we did it. So the other thing that I think is important that was mentioned early on, all of the licensing was done by the local people. A number of years ago, all of the off-premise was taken to DABS in the code. They now have the responsibility to license all of these people. And they also do all of the adjudication on the administrative licensing, or which you'll hear after shortly. So that has been a change, and Easy Code has barely caught up with it in the law, but we finally got it straightened out. So, but when you do cub operations, that's what you do. You go in, you go out, and you can send a postcard, you can send a letter. The law just reads, let them know that you've been there. So is that all straight? Now you're more confused and all. Okay, any more questions on that? So off premise is a little bit different than on premise. So, Okay, any questions? Let's take a break. Good night. In 15 minutes, we will re-adjourn and make sure the next, which we will cover all the administrative violation processes, we'll have enough time. The gateway is through DABS. That's where you submit the referrals. And I want to clean it up real fast. The only person that can submit referrals to make a difference to DABS is law enforcement, not the county, not anybody else. The whole system in the code is clear that the referrals that you want administrative action must come to law enforcement, DABS. And of course, the criminal stuff goes one way, the administration goes the other. But with that, I would like to, they all have microphones, and there's a very important set of presentations. Okay.
Thank you. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Sam McHenry and I represent the General.
And the commission. I'm Angela Nicholas. I'm the director of the licensing and compliance division. So it's my division that issues the licenses, while the commission technically issues them. But we do all the prep work to tell the commission they're ready to go, then they issue the license, but we also process the administrative actions to take action against the licenses, which again, the commission has to ratify as well. So this is probably, as Art said, the process you know least about, because once you submit your report to us, you may never actually have to deal with it again until you visit that retailer another time. So hopefully we will shed some light on this process so it's not quite so mysterious. And we're all tag teaming this, so it could be a bit of a free-for-all, just a heads up. Okay, so this is just a really simplified version of what the process looks like. You all conduct your investigations, and then you submit your reports to us. We review it to see if we're able to take agency action. If we are, then there's slides later that talk about what that looks like in depth. There may or may not be an administrative hearing. That's why there's a question mark next to that. 99% of the cases never have to go to an administrative hearing because they are settled. So if you relate to criminal court, it's just like a plea agreement where parties reach an agreement, does not go to trial. It's similar to that. Ultimately, the commission issues an order that ratifies whatever the sanctions are against the licensee. And as Art said earlier too, the individual employee, the seller, the server, they get a criminal citation, but that we also seek administrative penalties against them as well. Typically, it's a fine. Sometimes it can be they're suspended from selling alcohol as well. So this really is a collaborative effort, and Sam, I apologize, I don't have the AG in there in my little Venn diagram, but Sam represents, as he said, both the agency, DABS, and the commission. And so we are the regulatory agency. We're not an investigative agency or an enforcement agency like a lot of states, control states. Their Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control Service, whatever they call it, has kind of two arms to it. And they have actually sworn peace officers who are alcohol agents that work for the regulatory agency. We have a very clear line of separation between us and then you all as law enforcement. And honestly, I think it works best that way, so that we can each specialize in what it is that we do best. The commission has the sole authority over granting licenses and also imposing sanctions when people are naughty. And at the bottom there in the green box is where you can submit your violations via email, rather than have them go to just one person, although frankly right now it really is one person monitoring that inbox. We chose to have this more generic email so that if that person were to ever leave, well, we can have someone else monitoring that and to ensure that we don't miss anything if they're submitting to us. Just check in. Reporting violations, as Art noted, we're not going to know about a violation unless you all give us the heads up and send us your actual report. I've only been with the DABS for 3 years, but I've heard that once upon a time, you all would just submit a copy of the citation to whoever, probably was the local authority at the time. Unfortunately, that's not sufficient. We do need the actual police report. And then in order for us to take action, Is there any question about that? I see some finger pointing going on over here at this table. Good. Just want to make sure everyone's clear on that. We have to receive the report no later than 8 business days after you finished your investigation. And we've got a calendar on the next page that shows how you calculate that. And it's after the investigation is complete. So yes, Jill,
There's an online question. Why is there an 8-day window?
that would be a legislative question. It's in the statute.
It's in the statute.
It is in statute, right? But the why 8 days? Couldn't tell you that. I would ask your local legislature. Any other question?
This kind of question, just a little bit of insight into that 8 days. Is anything to less than that? We're seeing in not enough time, you know. Anything more than that? So I can see the bar restaurant may have, you know, lost some files or anything that they you know, usually destroy something after 10 days or employees more than 8 days is too long.
So just to recap, for those of you online, Tanner said that the 8 days is because anything less than that really isn't long enough for law enforcement to be able to get everything assembled and reported to DABS. Anything more than that, and the licensee may not have retained whatever evidence might be relevant. For example, scanning records, they're required to be kept for 7 days, but only 7 days. So there's probably a legislative compromise, as many things are. Yes.
And this is really important. I believe it's 8 days after they complete their investigation. It is 8 days after they complete your investigation. It is not 8 days after they do the covert operations. It is after you complete your thorough investigation.
And if you have an ongoing investigation that spans days, weeks, sometimes months, just be clear in your report that it explains that, right? Because if the beginning of your report starts out with on March 1st, blah, 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 and then we don't send a notice to the licensee until June, they're gonna say, wait a minute. So if you didn't conclude your investigation until May 30th, just explain, it was an ongoing, we went back to this establishment multiple times and have a very clear ending date to your investigation, and then we'll be good, as long as you get it to us in time. Yeah.
Just that where we've seen this, the ongoing investigation has been in the single event permits where somebody keeps resubmitting for permits and they've got some problems. That's usually where we see that where it isn't wrapped up with the pay.
Right, and typically your easy checks, we're talking off-prem today, right, are going to be a 1-5 and when you submit the report. But you may have a problem licensee that you want to do something more in depth, in which case, again, just document. That's the word of the day. So the best evidence to submit with your police report.
There's a question online.
Oh, online question.
Question from a health department. It says, we as a local health department will request a police report, but the cities won't always get that to us on time. Can DABS better communicate that requirement to the cities? Or why as the local health department do we have to request that and send it in? Since the local health departments aren't the enforcing agency, why doesn't DABS request that? You can clarify.
Oh, well, I guess I can request it now. So when you're emailing your reports to us, and I don't have a contact for your local health department, you'll have to know who that is, but why not just send it to them at the same time? It's one and done, right? So that makes sense. Great, thank you.
So on the Cubs investigations, like Angela has presented on this slide, we'd like to have, and you guys have been really good about this, giving us the statements from the Cubs. And they're usually the 2 Cubs that go in. We have photos of the Cubs. And we have their information, and all their personal information has been redacted. And that's important because
You got to choke up on that a little bit.
We can't hear you.
okay, sorry.
You got to be all the way up there.
So all their information has been redacted, and you've been really good about that because we do send a copy of that to the licensee and the employee, correct? So it's important for them to see what happened. We also get a receipt from the alcohol purchase and photos of the employee who sold the alcohol or whatever the violation was. Usually we get a photo of the can of alcohol, can of beer or whatever it is also. And the copy of the citation. The citation is to the employee, and that's the only person that's going to get a misdemeanor B offense. We don't have anything to do with that. That goes typically to the justice courts, and it can hit that employee pretty hard. Average fine on that is about $690. And I know that the prosecutors have some discretion there, but that seems to be the amount of the fine. DABS is also interested in a fine on the employee. That is usually about $200. If possible, we like to offer the employee a 5-day suspension in lieu of the fine, because a $900 fine for a human error can hit pretty hard. So we try to offer that. Unfortunately, a lot of the licensees will terminate the employee on the first violation. I wish that wasn't the case, but it does happen. That's just my personal thought on that, but anyway. Then let's see. Oh, and the contact information from the server, but that's all on the ticket. And again, that helps us contact the employee so we can resolve the administrative action against the employee also.
Thank you. And if you haven't, we occasionally will get reports that are not redacted. We really appreciate if you do the redacting ahead of time. Otherwise, we will have to, because we absolutely are going to protect the identity of the cub. We're not going to release that. And then I think on the next, we've got some slides coming up to show you an example. And SBI does a great job of assigning cubs actual numbers. So that we don't know their names. It's just a initials, date of birth, so we know that they are indeed in the report a minor. We don't have to dig to find that. It makes it really easy for us. I think that's it on this.
I was just going to mention sort of contact information. Just make sure you're getting a good phone number, and possibly even email contact information. I've talked to some of the compliance officers later on. Sometimes it's hard for them to contact the employee later on because a lot of times they get fired. Just make sure everything's up to date, good address, a good telephone number, and a good email.
And we can usually get that information from the court's website. But yeah, it does save us a step there, not having to track it.
Correct. This is yours. Take it away.
All right.
I just reformatted it. Sorry.
No, you're good. So as far as investigative reporting, our reports are frankly like software because we don't have those things. So I think I have an example coming up, but our reports are even when it comes to 2 or 3 pages tight. We put everything possible in that report. And we create comments made by the employee. We'll actually cut and paste the Cub statement and put it in there, even though they already have a copy of the Cub statement. It's already in the report, so they don't have to kind of look for it. We also make sure we put all again training. Just make sure you're putting all those things into your report. It really does keep you out of your hearings. I've noticed a lot of owners and managers, they do look at those reports. If it's not very detailed, you might have to go to a hearing because you're not writing a very detailed report. So make sure you're doing that.
Excellent point.
So this is an example of this is actually comes out at a off-premise licensee. As you can probably notice, like she mentioned earlier, we use Cub numbers, and we don't use their names or even like their first names. We actually use a Cub number, and we make sure you're putting how old they are and their date of birth. So not just their date of birth, but how old the actual Cub was at the time of the incident. And then, as you see, again, we cut and paste the actual statement and put it in there. Even if it has spelling errors, just put spelling errors in there. Just don't change anything, really just cut and paste. And then we put down like who's gonna be there, where we went in, how we identified the Cubs. You guys should put in there, we took photos of the Cubs that day, so make sure you documented all that in your report. And then make sure you're also saying how your the entry of the premise, what they did they scan the beer, did they scan an ID? Because some establishments, they don't have scanners, they just physically look at it, or you type just date of birth. So make sure you're saying how they're actually checking the Cubs is very important. Do they have identification on them, on the person, like the same Bob, is it, you know, whatever they had on their uniform. And also making sure that they make, like in this one, I said, like, the question was, the license was just sold beer were covered buyers, and that person's response was, yeah, I just realized that. Make sure you're making those little comments. And I had one recently where the person told me like, oh, I looked at the driver's license, said 2003. Make sure you're making a note of that. It really does help you keep out of court. And then at the very bottom, make sure you're doing the after action. Like, what are the actual violations? You might actually have more than just a Cub cell. You might have the Cub cell. You might have the employee not having identification on the shirts that was visible. You can actually see other things too while you're walking in there. Did they have maybe more than 2 displays out, or they didn't have warning signs? Make sure you're looking for those things while you're doing your Cub cells.
Can I just, one thing that I've noticed on some of these reports, most of you do a great job, but don't just cut and paste these. If you've done 4 in a night, give us some good factual details of, exactly what happened in that particular location. That will help us a lot.
This probably speaks for itself, because this is just a sample report for training. This is not how you would redact it, because this actually takes out the licensee's name and the employee's name, right? And so this just, because we're not trying to call attention to, whoever this was, 7-Eleven or Chevron or whoever. So anyway, the only thing that you would have to redact, and honestly, you really won't have to redact much of anything if you just use Cub numbers like they have, will be virtually nothing for you to redact from the report. Because it's all about protecting the Cub. Because really that's what we want to do. They're providing such a good service for our community, and they're minors, and so we don't want their information out there.
I do want to make a note on, in this particular incident, we actually also educated our the person that sold how to properly check for ID. So not just are we giving them a citation, but we're actually walking through the process of how to actually check the ID to prevent it from happening again. So make sure when you're writing the citations, you're actually going saying, what did you do wrong? Okay, this is where you actually look on the ID in red, tells you date of birth. That's a future occurrences.
Great. So as I talked about, we really are vigilant about wanting to protect the identity of the Cub. We don't want them to get harassed. There have been in the past, fortunately, this hasn't happened anytime recently, and I don't think it was off premise. I believe it was an on premise where the clerk was actually snapping a picture of the Cub's ID. So, we don't want any of that happening, because they deserve to be protected. It's sensitive information anyway that grandma protects, and so it would be a violation to release that. But we do have to give as much information as we can to the licensee and to the individual employee. It's due process, right? They're entitled to know what is the evidence against them, so that they can make an intelligent decision about whether they want to resolve their violation through SAM or ask for a hearing, which they are entitled to have. They don't have to, accept the offer, the settlement offer that SAM will extend to them. So as we've already talked about, the best practice is to assign the Cubs a specific number, and then you're never having to refer to them by name, and it keeps things confidential from that standpoint. Otherwise, if you don't use that Cub number assignment, we're going to have to do a lot of heavy redacting in your reports. How to calculate the 8 business days. Again, as we said earlier, it's from the date the investigation is completed. So on here, if you did the Cub sale on the 15th, then because it's business days, not just days, we don't start, day 1 does not start till the following Monday. And so it's just a nice visual that actually our violations program manager put together to give you a good visual. So timing really does matter. If we don't get that report within 8 business days, then we cannot jurisdictionally take administrative action over that licensee. So it is really, really important. And so not only does that help hold the licensee accountable, they're going to have a fine, oftentimes days of suspension too, when they cannot sell alcohol. They can still be open for business, they just can't sell or serve alcohol. We're just hamstrung at that point if we don't get that within the 8 business days. However, okay, anybody recognize the picture from the top? I know I'm dating myself, but I just want to know, show of hands. Who knows what shows that from? Yes, the original Get Smart, not like the new, that's like old school Get Smart. So even if you miss the deadline by this much a day, please just submit your report to us anyway, because it helps us to track things, to look for trends, or we can contact SBI or whoever, or even just ourselves, whoever's assigned from my division to that licensee to volunteer to come out and do some training and educate them. So even if we can't take official administrative action, we want to know about it so that we can try to help it, prevent it from happening again. Are there any questions about that? And the bottom is wrong. I will tell Aaron, that number is not 40%. What is that number? Yes, awesome. So that's probably old information. So this is great to know that what you do really, really matters, and you're making a huge impact in the sale of alcohol to minors. This is, I'm not going to read these verbatim, it's just a lot of words, but just so you know, there are 4 levels of violations: minor, moderate, severe, and grave. Sales to a minor are serious, sorry, I said severe, serious. And then sale over service, so sale to an intoxicated person, is a grave violation. So for grave violations, the commission has the authority, it's not mandated, but they have discretion to revoke someone's license even on the first violation if it's of a grave nature. So those are really, really important. But the sales to a minor, by the time you get to, we hope you don't, but by the time you get to the 3rd one, you're probably looking at revocation. It's certainly an option on the violation grid. So here are just some samplings of what the penalties would be for sale to a minor or any other serious violation. Do you want to talk about this?
And like I say, on the first violation, I'd like to kind of give make that an education process. Don't hit them too hard. We usually hit them with the option of a fine or a 5-day suspension, but most of these businesses, that 5-day suspension would really hurt them a lot more than a $1,000 fine. So most of them will opt for the fine. The employee will also get an option again. Like I said, I hope the employee is still around and can, instead of the $200 fine, do a 5-day suspension. And then the second violation, you can see it gets much more serious. And this one, we give a fine and a suspension. And that typically will get the attention of the licensee. And we won't see them for a 3rd. When we're talking about a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd, the violations track on a 36-month basis, but it's, tell me how that works again, because it's not necessarily on the first violation of 2 years.
Right. It's from the date of adjudication. So the first violation was May 1st, but it wasn't settled and ratified by the commission until July 1st. Your 36 months starts from July 1st. So anytime within the 36 months following July 1st, if they get another violation of the same type, then it would count as a 2nd and then a 3rd, like that.
And again, on the violations, especially on the 2nd and the 3rd, the suspension time is really what hurts the business and gets their attention.
How many of you have been to establishments, not necessarily in your official capacity, but as a patron, you'll see they have the sign. It's like the sign of shame, right? Oh, we can't serve alcohol, we got a violation. Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I think that not only the hit to their sale, their bottom line, right, not being able to sell, but sort of the public shaming probably has a much greater impact than just paying a fine, right? I'll just write a check, pay a fine. So we are looking a lot more seriously, and I know the commission is too, at adding suspensions, more so than probably has been done in the past. I already kind of talked about this. Yes?
Or can they cover up the windows with the paper, or do they have to do the off-premise? I've heard of
Oh, the off-premise. Yeah, they just have to be able to have it not be accessible and not for sale, but we don't make them remove it from the premise, because they're licensed to store it, right? Still, they just can't sell it while they're suspended from selling.
And I think I've even seen this more than actual locks.
Yeah, that would be the best, and then and they are supposed to have clear separation, right? They can't be mixing the beer with the soda, so to lock those cabinets would seem to be the most effective, I would think. So this is just, Sam already went over the violations, just a sort of typical settlement for sell to a minor. Again, and this is without any aggravating factors, right? Just your, I hate to say basic, but nothing that's elevating it, right? We've had a few in the past, year or so where the clerk and or the purported owner is, getting hostile with not only the cops, but with law enforcement, chasing them out to the parking lot, and you have to question their sanity at that point. But those we definitely consider aggravating, and they will get something more than this for their settlement offer. So this is the process. It looks a little bit confusing, but it's actually fairly simple. So you all go out, number one, do your compliance checks. You send us your violation report in a timely manner, which we now know is within 8 business days from the completion. We send out an initial email notification to the licensee. We have to send that out within 8 business days as well. So not only do you all have 8 business days, we have the same window in which to notify the licensee. Hey, we received this report, indicates you may have a violation. We tell them what it's for, just by title. We don't go into great detail, because at that point, our staff member who thoroughly reviews those reports and submits them to me for processing a notice of agency action hasn't done all of that thorough work yet. It's just the placeholder. So as Tanner noted before, if that licensee has any evidence they want to preserve or do anything on their own, they know, oh gosh, here's the date, here's what they think happened. I'm going to take whatever actions I feel are appropriate. After that, we review your reports thoroughly. We issue a notice of agency action. It's like a criminal complaint, except it's administrative. Basically just alleging what the violation is. Here's what the penalties are. And then it gives Sam's information, tells them that he will be holding pre-hearing meetings, and that's when the negotiations and settlements happen. Pre-hearing conference, Sam attends those. Our violations program manager attends those as well, so that we can make sure we're all on the same page and we're tracking things effectively and thoroughly. Then you branch off either A, if the licensee disputes the violations, or the settlement offer and just says nope, then they can request a hearing. And we do have hearing officers on contract that will basically ALJs, they'll provide that service for us. If they do want to settle it and we all agree, then we get signed settlement statements that I sign, Sam signs, the licensee signs, goes to the commission, and then the commission considers that at its monthly meeting on the consent calendar. And then once the commission ratifies what's in that settlement agreement, it's reduced to a commission order, and which our executive director then signs, and then that is the order. It's like a judge's order. And so it has deadlines in it for when they have to serve their suspension dates, when their fines are due, all of that. If there's any violation of that order, we can file order show cause, or just bring them back before the commission, and we could take action on their bond, or other sanctions as appropriate. Luckily, that doesn't really happen. Seen that happen, so hopefully it won't. Hopefully everyone just follows orders as directed. We then, and it's nothing, thankfully, we have to conscious decision to do. Our computer will automatically send over information on sales to a minor, both on-prem, off-prem. Honestly, we over communicate. We send all violations over, to DPS, but then they end up, the sales to a minor end up in the database that's on DHS's website, as Art mentioned earlier, and there's thousands of people in there.
So again, like Angela was telling us, the first step where I get involved was the pre-hearings. And it's scheduled for a date certain, but a lot of times the licensee will call and want to discuss it beforehand. It's also an opportunity for me to educate them on the process and explain to them why in an administrative hearing, it's in their best interest to decide. You being in law enforcement, this administrative hearing is a little bit different. It's a preponderance of evidence standard, beyond a reasonable doubt. So when I talk to them about that, it's pretty much okay. How much do you want? And usually, like I said, they get settled. I've been doing this for 4 months, and I haven't had any where I've had to request a hearing. And again, this is a little bit different. You may have heard of administrative law judges. We don't have that with them, but we do have 2 contract attorneys that will hear the case if we're not able to settle it. Another thing that will convince licensees to settle is that, again, after I tell them, we just have to prove, above 50%. And you guys have done all the work for us. We've got the report, we've got the cut statement, we've got the police report, we've got copies of the receipts, we've got copies of or photos of who sold the alcohol. And we tell them, we can do the administrative hearing, but if you lose there, you're going to be paying for their time. And that's not cheap. They're billing out at $300, $400, $500 an hour. So that usually will get them also. Again, if it doesn't, we go to that hearing. I've seen one from my predecessor who they stipulated that the sale occurred. They just wanted to, they didn't agree to the fine or suspension. There's really not much you can do there. Again, an administrative agency, as long as they're not acting arbitrary and capricious, there's a rational basis for the decision, it's upheld. It's administrative agencies are different animals. I don't know, you probably haven't had to deal with them too much, but that's how they operate. And that's why we don't see much in the appeal or the hearing requests. Then there's other steps there. There's due process after that. You probably don't want to be bored to death on that, but there are appeal rights to either the district court or the Court of Appeals or Supreme Court, depending on the case. But again, I don't know if I've ever seen a written decision went to that level on a dam's case.
Most important part is if it does go to a hearing, Sam will meet with you ahead of time and talk about, what to expect. And, of course, you can review your reports to refresh your memory, etc. Not to worry. They are extremely rare, as Sam said. This is sort of redundant, I guess. It is informal, but people are placed under oath. But it typically would occur like in a conference room, so a courtroom, so much more relaxed setting, which I think is really important, especially if I've never heard of a cop having to testify, but if they ever had to, it's much more relaxed than a courtroom. Again, as Sam talked about, the burden of proof is a preponderance, so just a little over 50%, we say 51%. Formal rules of evidence don't apply, but there are some parameters, right? Don't need to belabor this really, but some hearsay can come in. So that's the major difference between criminal court, even civil court. And of course, the hearing official can take judicial notice about things, just like a judge could, things that would be common knowledge. So now this was a question back a while, last year, I think there was a pamphlet put together, maybe a training video too for the Cubs. Oh my gosh, what if they have to testify? We need to ease their anxiety. Again, super unlikely. I've never even heard of it happening. But, this is where your robust investigations and your really, really good documentation is going to save the day. And that's what's gonna keep, frankly, even a hearing from being necessary at all, let alone having to have a cub testify. Subpoenas, if a cub did have to testify, we would serve them on the law enforcement officers and then they could get them out to the cubs. Nobody needs to know, where the cubs live, et cetera. Sam will meet with them in advance. The cub, of course, they have their written statements. They're allowed to review those in advance to refresh their recollection. So really, I think that whole process then would should keep the peace. And they're not going to be required under oath to reveal personal information about where they live, et cetera. So we really do a lot to protect their identity and keep them at arm's length from all of this bureaucratic part of the process.
And Angela, I think that most licensees would stipulate to what the cub presented in their report. So I don't think that's going to happen very often. If it goes to a formal hearing, I'll just tell you, if the penalty sought is over $3,000, I'm saying the penalty sought through the settlement, over $3,000 and a suspension of over 10 days, then it automatically goes to a formal hearing. And the licensee can always, even if it's below that level, can request a formal hearing if they desire.
And the difference between informal and formal is in a formal process, discovery is allowed, so depositions, that kind of thing. I haven't seen that happen in this space either, but just a little bit more robust process. And so why should you submit violations to both us and your local businessing authority, or now and the health department too? Give it to your health department because they want it, right? Just seeing if you're all awake. You're all going to notify your health departments, right? Okay, awesome. It standardizes the penalties across the state, so that we can do our best to make sure everyone's treated equitably, right? No matter where you are, whether you're in Salt Lake County or San Juan County or wherever, Zane County, everyone should be treated similarly. Importantly, though, it's the Alcoholic Beverage Services Commission is the only body that has plenary authority over all of these licenses statewide. And so that's why we need to get the violation in addition to your local authorities. We track things, as I noted before, even if you miss that deadline, we're still tracking them internally and looking for trends, looking for who might need extra education. And so it is important just to let us know, even if we can't take formal action. Well-documented violation history is something that's really, really important. I know for the commissioners as they're looking at who to license, they're interested in, as this entity, it's the entity that holds the license. They may be associated with another license. Maybe I have 5 different licenses, but one in particular hasn't ever had a violation. I'm applying for a new license, let's say. The commission wants to know, has my entity had other violations previously? So we won't necessarily always know that unless you let us know. And even if it's one we can't take formal action against, it's just something to consider. Do you want to talk about this? I know it's not your slide, but you did talk about other violations besides the Cub sale.
Sure. So we're going to be talking about cashiers. So obviously with cashiers, they have certain requirements when you need a cashier. There's a little asterisk, you guys want to make sure you're reading that. Must complete the easy training within the 30 days of hire. I guess that's changed.
That has changed. That's why I put the asterisk. This PowerPoint was prepared before the session ended. So as Art noted earlier, there's no more 30-day window effective May 3rd. And we're all really glad about that.
The one is the name that make sure the property waste or beautiful too. Number one, it's actually name that is visible. One can see what it says. Must be at least 16 years old, and those 21 must be under supervision trained by someone that's over 21 and present in the store. Again, they have to be present in the store, somewhere on premise, somewhere. And they're responsible for checking IDs even in the self-checkout line. So there's been a target recently. Some targets now won't even allow you to buy alcohol at the self-checkout. You walk up, they'll scan it. But just make sure if you do have, if you have self-checkout, make yourself aware of how they're doing it. So make sure they're in compliance with that. Employees that are under 21 who are not cashiers cannot handle alcohol containers. So I mean, again, Target, like, you have a stalker that's walking by and he's 16 years old and you start handling the alcohol. You can't do that. Okay. And then managers are required to have both the off-premise and the manager training. It's not very expensive. I believe it's $25, right? And it's lifetime. So once they get there, it's good until I think they put a date on it. I think it's like $20.99. But it's once they only have to take manager training once. Even things a lot of our when we do our educational checks with my sergeant. What happens is a lot of managers think that's the only training we need to do. And then a lot of managers now we've been seeing is they're off-premise or on-premise training for actual server or seller is expired because I think their manager training kind of supersedes that, but it's not true at that point.
That's a good point. Yes. So manager training, which is through DADS, has no expiration, but you still need to do your regular, I'm going to call it your regular sales training, right? Your server sales training. Now it's going to be every 3 years effective May 3rd. So it will be consistent on premise 3 years, off premise 3 years, which is really, really good. And again, no 30-day window effective May 3rd. Yes, Art.
Real quick, name badge. We did easy. The name badge should not be their name. It should be some other name. And they are required to have the cross listed in the back, but I just want to make that clear that it need not be their name. Well, yeah, it has to be above the wage, certain requirements, etc. And then they have to keep the cross check back, but it's not their real name.
I mean, it can be their real name, but it doesn't have to be. Yeah, exactly.
We recently seen like numbers. I seen like Shirley's right now have like a number, and that's their assigned employee number, just be employee number.
So there are some, because this is off premise, totally different for on premise. There are some areas where local ordinances actually can be different than state, right? So for example, your local entities, your counties and cities will regulate which hours during the day your off-premise establishments can sell alcohol. So you will see anything from some areas are 24/7 to others, there's no sales on Sunday or no sales after midnight, whatever. That is totally within the authority of the local jurisdictions. And so that's one area where they can be all over the map. There is no proximity in state code that pertains to off-premise. So you could be literally right next to a library or a school, whatever. That's just the state code though. The local ordinances, there may be a local ordinance that does impose its own proximity restrictions. So this would come into play when someone applies for a license and then they're seeking what we call local consent from their local businessing authority to have an off-premise retail establishment in that particular location. So you may want to check with your local municipalities and see if they have their own proximity, but there isn't one in the state code. Something where they cannot be more restrictive though than state code, a couple of them. Number one, a local authority cannot tell an on-premise beer retailer that they cannot sell through a drive-through window. That is expressly authorized in state code. I think I'm only aware of one establishment that actually has that. I don't know if they use it or not. But anyway, it's there for the option. And they also, local authorities cannot restrict and say that a minor 16 or older cannot sell beer. Again, you have to have someone who's 21 and older, they're supervising, but for off-premise only, you can't have someone as young as 16 selling beer at an off-premise beer retail establishment. So these are the key points. We probably belabored them. Send your violations in within 8 business days of the date you complete your investigation. Please redact your CUB information, except the date of birth. We do need to be able to see clearly when we're reviewing the report. Yes, they were definitely under age 21. And obtain the employee contact information. That will help Sam more than anybody as he's trying to settle these violations with the individual employees. And then include in the report, if you would please, whether that cashier has actually completed their training as they were supposed to. Sometimes I've seen reports where you've asked and the person, you know, either says yes, they have, or sometimes they've been, no, I haven't been trained yet. It would be really great if you would check in the server database to see, you know, have they done their training or not. And there is a bit of a window. I think there's 30 days where that may not be completely current. However, that's something that they could come back then with Sam and say, no, I really did do my training. It just wasn't uploaded yet into the system. And if they present proof to Sam, then we'll dismiss that particular violation against the server. But that is really an important thing to note, because we are trying to track that trend as well. How many of these people who are making these cells have not been properly trained? Because as Art said, that is really a big deal. That if you're going to hold somebody responsible for that, they ought to know what the laws are and what they can and can't do. Right. Questions? Seeing none, then thank you. There's our contact information if you would like it.
We have with us Commissioner Gordon. We would love to hear from you since all of these adjudications end up with you. Did you ever just would like to share your thoughts on the commission about the sales to minors, et cetera? I think it would be helpful if they heard from you. You'd be so kind to do that.
Sorry. I am just so excited to see so many people here today. This turnout is amazing. And I just want to, my name is Jacqueline Orton. I'm the chair of the Licensing and Compliance Subcommittee. And so, Art is correct. All of your reports come to us. And I'm just so grateful. You know, we have noticed an uptick on our consent calendars lately, and we have actually had to set up a separate time lately to go over all of those consent calendar items. And while it's sometimes alarming, certainly disconcerting to see all of these violations pile up, at the same time, I think that a lot of that is because each of you are taking the responsibility for doing your jobs and helping us, partnering with us to make sure that we are educating people properly, to make sure that we're getting, you know, the underage serving down in time, as has been mentioned before. That's a tough job, and someone's got to do it. And we as commissioners are so grateful to our law enforcement partners who have really stepped up pace and really come through in making those checks, helping us with education. And I think that, you know, I think that over time, you know, right now, I think we're dealing with a lot of, I'll say, even though most of them have taken their server training, I think we're dealing with a lot of new employees who may not have ever worked around liquor sales before. They, you know, it takes a little bit of time, experience helps. And in the pandemic, you know, there's just been a lot of turnover in industry. And so while we are trying to make sure that we're giving everyone the tools, you know, all of our licensees, the tools and the resources that they need to be able to do what they need to do to keep the public safe, we really rely on all of you to help us out with that. And we actually, I guess it's about a year and a half ago, we asked the compliance division if they would start with exactly which law enforcement agencies, you know, made each, or I guess, each, you know, whether it was a clubbing or whether it was something else, you know, someone serving while intoxicated has been something that has been taking up recently. But it's amazing to see how many new agencies that we didn't know were really out there doing this work in the community. We're now much more aware that, oh, you know, this came from Roy. Oh, this came from Lee. This came, you know, and so it helps us feel like we're being much fairer. And getting our, you know, we're not just solely focusing on this community or that community. That our law enforcement partners are helping us all over the state, in every county. And I did make note, I don't remember whose presentation it was, I did make note that there are a couple of counties where we're not doing quite as well as other counties. And so I'm hoping that, you know, we'll be able to pull in a little bit more assistance from our partners there as well. But I just wanted to tell you, thank you. You are making our jobs, our lives much easier. Oh, okay, you know what? This might be the first time in my life anyone has ever told me they couldn't hear me. My father always told me that my voice carried through brick walls. So,
It's just not carrying all the way through to the internet. So.
good. Well, I guess I'll sum up by just saying thank you. Thank you to all of you who are helping all of us do our jobs.
Couple of points, and maybe that whatever else you don't hear from me, it's okay. The easy design point is 95% compliance. The way you get there is 4 compliance checks a year. That's the design point. What happens after 3 months, they sort of tail off. I don't care what you do or whatever. But if you do regular, you know, the worst thing you can do is go out and do one and don't do something until 9 months later. It's hardly fair to them in a way because there is a natural drop off in in the literature too. So that's why the 4 design points, 4 times a year, if you regularly go, then you go from check to check to check. You avoid the Class B misdemeanors. And your workload, right, for that, see that? This administrative process. And and what's important, we know when you hit that level, they are also not selling to the kids. And that's what's important here. We want to keep it away from the kids. Because in Utah, every kid deserves a healthy brain and a bright future. To reach 21. So remember the 4 checks a year. That's what keeps it to the 95% level. You avoid the Class B misdemeanors. We get the resource done. It costs us less, saving time. And Angela is.
I forgot to mention, this is so important. So I don't know how I forgot, but so we started several months ago during the commission meetings. This is like the best part of the whole meeting. I know Commissioner Orton will agree with me. We display a rolling list of all the people who have passed the code checks. So these are the people who are doing it right. So keep up the educational efforts, praise people when you see that they're doing it right. Like you send a cub in and they don't sell to them, awesome, run in there and congratulate them. And thank them for doing such a great job because it really makes a big difference. And we are so excited when we see that list. It's getting bigger, I think, each month. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight that. Thank you.
I think the no sale list will get bigger because we're all coming off of COVID and these places need to get into the habit. I think we're going to proceed with the after lunch, not skip lunch, but we don't want to waste any time. So we have the cup training. Who's doing the cup training? Oh, he's not here. Oh, well, my gosh. Wait, what? Yeah. Okay, he'll be back in a little bit. So maybe, Amber, can we just move on to somebody down the agenda?
It's a raffle.
Yeah, all the raffle pickups are back there. So your suggestion, we take a break and then we'll have lunch? Okay, shall we do that? Take a break, have lunch? And then we will readjourn when we get the club expert call back.
Probably not. Okay, back. Remember,